Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. This time, DS9 finale, Jem'Hadar. Jem'Hadar, who are they? Who are they? You know, hopefully you know, because if we're the first ones to tell you, it's going to be kind of weird, but maybe it's a different perspective. Jem'Hadar, It's All Been Tricked Before. Speaking of things you may not know, do you know we're on Patreon? Do you know all the things you get with Patreon? Bonus episodes, everything from including the mothership. It's all been in a radio hour. Get to see us on video for better or worse. You get extra stuff on the video, extra stuff. You might want to hear what we think about other TV shows or just the world in general, or what Eagles shirt am I wearing this week. So go to patreon.com/IABD. Sign up. Very inexpensive. And if you don't go, I hope the Jem'Hadar don't come to get you. Jem'Hadar, DS9, It's All Been Tricked Before.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Tricked Before. Some of your regular hosts are here.
This is Stephen.
This is Jimmy-Jerome. Keith's actually here. Let's listen to him now.
I didn't know where this was going. It was starting off to be just this is a Jake and Nog episode, and it's not bad. We're getting some things, and I was amused by Quark.
Yeah.
All that involvement. I'm glad I didn't look at the title. I didn't look at the title. I didn't know.
Oh, you didn't know that? You somehow avoided the title?
Yeah, I was just kind of going through, and I was like, "What the hell is what?" Just suddenly, this just got serious, and yeah, I had no idea that it was going to have anything to do with the Dominion, which I'm obviously much more invested in this time through.
Oh yeah,
and understand what's happening there, and so there's just this introduction suddenly, and yeah.
I do have to ask you, because you're not going to be here for the discussion. When the Vorta showed up and pretended to be running from the Jem'Hadar, did that fool you, or did you know immediately? You didn't realize immediately that's a Vorta?
I had no idea who that was, and I completely bought it until the end. I was like, what?
It completely ruined the episode from the jump for me, because I was like, I know that's a Vorta. I know what the Vorta are.
Okay, so that's the race of the telekinetics, or
right? Because there's the founders, and then the Vorta serve the founders, and the Vorta kind of act as supervisors to the Jem'Hadar. So when she showed up as like, oh, I'm running from them, I'm like, you're their freaking boss.
it was no idea.
I'm glad it was preserved for you, because immediately when she showed up, I was like, oh, wrong.
It was just exciting to get to this point of this is ramping up finally. They'd put it down long enough where I wasn't thinking about it, and that was, I think, the perfect time to bring it back, and then
from here for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Who was your shady character in the Jem'Hadar?
I guess it's going to have to be her. I was that fooled.
Eris, yeah. Who was your annoyance?
I mean, there aren't really many other options other than the main guard, essentially the main
Jem'Hadar guard.
Yeah.
Okay. Who are you having a drink with for the Jem'Hadar?
Man,
that's a tough one.
I still can't help but like her. The
Eris.
Yeah.
Okay. That was great, Keith. Thanks for chiming in. That's all you're going to hear of him, but I do have his rankings for the end of the episode, so I appreciate that we got his thoughts, even if he's not present for our full episode. Or maybe he is here, he's just being quiet from here on out. I will ask Stephen, what is his first impression of the episode, The Jem'Hadar?
Last week I said, that episode started off, I was like, oh yeah, here we go. All right, and then I was kind of like, it was all right. This one I kind of went the other way, where this was one where I was like, all right, I'm not sure where this is going. And I was like, oh, all right. Yeah, I came around on it. The climax was a true climax that I did not expect. A lot of it. I was like, wait a minute. Wasn't this the episode where weren't the kids just hanging out and all this stuff? And then did not go where I thought, and in a good way. So yeah, I ended up liking it a lot. Yeah, and I know we've talked about the Dominions coming, and they got here. I mean, they didn't get here, but they're coming. Even more so than ever. So at this point,
totally agree. Like it was a great setup episode, a great introduction of the Dominion episode, because while we've heard about them, there are 3 main races we'll get to know in the Dominion, and 2 of them are in this episode. Technically all 3 are in this episode, but 2 of them are definitely in this episode. And so it's yeah, I loved it a lot for the surprise and twist it had. And I loved it even more with the dichotomy of the kids' field trip mixed into it. Like,
Uh-huh.
what a great way to introduce the threat you're going to be fighting for the rest of the series.
Yeah, and and I know I noted this much later in the episode, but they actually are outside for some of it, and so it's very much that like la di la. We're on this. We're sure we went through the wormhole, but we're on this beautiful planet, which should have been it should always be a red flag. That never. Anytime it's like, wow, this is beautiful, this is great, we should hang out here. It's like it's a bad move, but I still fell into it, and
So,
yeah.
Let's say in that little clip that you heard of Keith and I talking, I asked him specifically if this episode was spoiled because did he remember what that race was that the alien that was kidnapped, Eris, was? And he did not remember, so it was all shocking and surprising to him at the end, which I was impressed by because he's watched a lot of DS9, so he would know. For me, the second I saw her, I said, oh, she's a Vorta. She's Dominion. This is all a ruse. But I assume because Keith, who's seen later episodes, didn't recognize it. You probably didn't see that twist coming.
No, and so that makes me feel better because I was like, oh, how did I not know? But
no, so, I mean that the character of Eris herself does not keep popping back up. Molly Hagan playing her. She's best known for Walker, the new show, the new Texas Ranger, 60 episodes. Solly, the movie with Tom Hanks, Election, Herman's Head. She has 152 credits, but I am. She did 2 episodes of The Orville.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, and she was on the conversion episode of Seinfeld, which I think we've had like 3 or 4 people that guested on that episode of Seinfeld have been on track
at that episode.
Halfway through the cast of Herman's Head, because Jane Sabet, remember, she had the part where she was Gates McFadden's double in the dancing scene. I think it was Crusher. Yeah. So we're definitely moving into again Molly Hagan, Seinfeld. Molly Hagan's been so much stuff, but
she's a well recognizable actress, and she has been interviewed and said how proud she was to play the first Vorta. Did they even mention the name Vorta in this episode?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so either. So I will tell you that her species is named the Vorta. Okay. And they are definitely a species we see a lot of in the rest of the series. So to me, as soon as I saw the ears, while it wasn't the Vorta or the Vorta character or characters that I've come to know very well, I was still like, oh, no, she's a Vorta. The Jem'Hadar essentially answered to the Vorta. So the whole time I'm like, yeah, she's their boss. I just kept waiting for her because I didn't remember the episode real well. I just kept waiting for her to be like, okay, you can take the force field down now. I'm in charge of the situation. And I know that's not how they chose to reveal, but that's what I was waiting for. Because I'm like, it did ruin a ton of the tension for me, but I think I can set that aside to objectively review the episode because I do think it was a really strong episode overall.
The one thought I did have at some point was like, why haven't they broken out yet? And so, which in a way was about her, she could do that or whatever, but
well, they didn't have Spock to telepathically control the guard from inside the cell.
Yeah, and I thought I liked her look. I thought it was very, and her look and her powers reminded me of the Empath, to go back to Teoa, very much like that. But also, it just struck me just now. She also looks like the end of Ghostbusters, Zool or whatever. Not the Conqueror, the Destroyer. Oh no, the Destroyer was Stay Puft Marshmallow. But I like Molly Hagan, so maybe that adds to it. But I did like the look of.
Who doesn't like Molly Hagan?
Yeah, I did like the look of the
stupid people. Stupid people. At the beginning, we get Jake wants to go on this, has built the science project. He's like, I'm a low tech guy. I'm fine with like planting some plants and watching them. Which I'm like, first of all, Cisco acts like this is taking the easy way out. His teacher's a freaking botanist. This is not taking the easy way out. She's going to challenge him so hard because he picked her specialty to do a science project on. And I feel like that's been lost in this episode that nobody mentions that. But to me, it reminded me of when I first joined band in school in like 7th grade. I wanted to play drums. And my dad was like, drums are too easy. You need to get something challenging. without understanding that drums are actually the section that does extra practice because it's the hardest section in the band to be in. I feel like Sisko at this point like missed the challenge Jake had set up for himself and was minimizing what Jake was doing.
That's a good point.
However, as much as I did not like the dad not thinking his project was challenging bit, and I really didn't like that, it rubbed me the wrong way. As much as I didn't like that, I did really appreciate him like suggesting the gamma quadrant. Well, what would you do if you could do anything in that? Well, this, no, not that. Anything else? Well, gamma quadrant. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do a planetary survey. And thinking of it as a working vacation and as a special trip for Jake and Ben. I also love how it spun out of that, but I love Ben's attitude of, I get to spend some time with my son. We're going to do something important. We're going to do something educational. It was such a good setup.
Yeah, and I stand the whole Nog Jake thing too, so I enjoyed them very much.
You've Nog's won you over already.
Yeah, I enjoyed him. Even like his panicking in this episode. Like I thought he was fun again, and his freaking out, and then them kind of coming to the rescue, but not entirely coming to the rescue at the end. I thought was just the right amount of growth and restraint. And then almost, and I thought I read this somewhere, somebody else feeling the same way, but they almost a little bit overplayed the Quark being annoyed with Sisko to me.
A little bit. But I will say any other show would have made this about Jake and Nog rescuing the grown-ups.
Yeah.
And I love that they did not get very far down the path of rescuing.
Yes, same here.
It was so realistic. If we're kids, we're going to try to do something, but we can't because we're just kids.
Yep, I enjoyed that very much. I thought it was perfect way to have them involved, but not.
I want to go ahead and shout out the writer. I mean, this was written by Iris David Burr.
Oh, okay.
You don't get any higher up in the DS9 food chain, in my opinion. I know he wasn't the showrunner yet, but he's the DS9 guy. And yeah, perfect writing. Directed by Kim Friedman. This was her second episode she directed of Star Trek, of DS9. She did one earlier this season, so we've talked about her. But yeah, I thought it was well written, well directed for sure. We get a tease of Dax and Captain Keel. I wrote down Keel, but on IMDb it's Keogh. Keo, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But he when he shows up is played by Alan Oppenheimer, who's best known for the movie Westworld, the show 9 in 2009, and then doing a lot of voice work like He-Man, the Master of the Universe, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. He has 338 credits, probably because of all the voice acting stuff. I don't see a death date, but his last credit was a couple of years ago.
I think he's
Toy Story 4. He was in Toy Story 4 as the old timer.
But
he'll do an episode of Voyager. He'll do a Star Trek video game. He did an episode of Next Gen back in season 6 as a Klingon. But yeah, he looks so familiar to me when I look at his picture. He's a character actor that's been in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, his look and his voice are always, right away. It's like, yep, that guy.
Yeah. I mean, he was in the movie Jumanji, the original.
Oh, yeah.
Tons of guest spots. I was trying to figure out where I knew him from, and I'm not sure. But he looks so freaking familiar. With a lot of his credits are voice acting, but he has enough live action mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
So many guest spots. Yeah. Anyway, but I liked the aspect of Dax is like, I always found him a bit arrogant, and Sisko's like, yeah, he said the same thing about you, and I could absolutely see how Dax is a bit arrogant. Like, I get it. So it was a really good. I know again. This is something I think DS9 does very well. The Next Generation frequently and consistently failed on is you give us a little detail, and then you don't have to like hold our hands and walk us through it. Right. But we see in the handful of scenes they have how Dax is arrogant and how this captain's arrogant, and you get the layers of the character and the complexity built in.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it's something that I really, and like I'm doing now, I'll shout out I'll say the name, Chakotea.net, who always has the transcripts, but the brevity of some of those scenes, CHAKOTEYA.net. They have all the Chakotea? Yeah, is that how you said it? Yeah.
Well, CHAKOTEYA OTAY is Chakotay, who was the first officer of Star Trek Voyager.
Oh, okay, that makes sense then. It's a really cool. So anyway, I use them, so shout out to them. But I like, I notice it oftentimes when we're doing the show, and I have it up just to reference. But it's the same here, where it's just a little scene. The brevity is really cool that they, like we were just saying, that to get those little drips and drabs. I often like, and I think we talked about this last week too, but I like when stuff like that comes out in drips and drabs rather than a big exposition necessarily. Sometimes you got to have a big exposition. Sometimes you build those little things in drips and drabs. I thought that was cool. So
yeah, I looked up your Chakotay whatever.
Okay.
And it is spelled just like a letter or two off of the character Chakotay.
Okay.
But it has to be a tribute. I mean, obviously, that the site's not big enough to have like articles written about the site.
Right.
But it has to be a tribute to Chakotay. Yeah, that is just a person who has gone through painstaking process of transcribing the scripts for Star Trek shows. That is not a... I mean, she does have a live journal, it looks like. I don't know if that's the same person or not, but it's spelled the same. That has not been updated since 2006. So, I don't know. I'm not going to go real deep right now, but I assume it has to be related to Voyager.
That makes sense.
She was a Voyager fan. So Jake brings Nog along on the expedition, as we mentioned, and Sisko's reaction of how crestfallen he is, but also Jake really sells it of, he's going to drop out. He's my best friend. And the things you do for your kids is what went through my head. I'm like, yup, like Sisko really, really does not like Nog. And I can say that confidently because it will be borne out in future episodes that he still thinks Nog is a bad influence on his son. Still does not like Nog at this point in the series. But he sets it aside because it means something to Jake and he loves Jake that deeply. And Jake has such a good heart and such good reasons for wanting to do it. It's so well done.
Yeah. And
then we get the scene of, we go to Quark's bar and he's asking Morn to talk. Until Odo enters, and then he's just like drops him trying to get Morn to talk. I know, like off stage, we've heard a lot about Morn just never shuts up. But like, oh, you haven't talked all day. What's wrong? And I just, my God.
I love that. That made me laugh very hard. I enjoyed that.
But yeah, the Sisko not liking Quark. I mean, Quark's like, Sisko likes me. No, he doesn't. No, I'm sure he does. Well, maybe there's one or two things that he doesn't like about me. That was all so freaking well done. But they really did a good job of setting up that Quark has his own motivation for this episode, that he is here for one reason. Because otherwise it would be Rob, right? But Rob's not in this episode. And it's like, why pay the guest star when you've got a lead and you can come up with a really juicy story to get your lead there?
Right.
I do feel like in later seasons they would have just sent Rom as Rom gets more developed. But at this point in the show, it did not feel too over the top to me to contrive it to be Quark instead of Rom. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I had the same thought too. Like, wait a minute, why isn't, why is he like, I'm going with my nephew? But it makes sense.
Well, the whole thing where he's like, Rom is so biased. I'm not biased, but Rom is so biased against you humans. Which we know Rom's not. Like, I loved that. And using Rom as an excuse. And then we get another rule of acquisition that nature decays, but latinum lasts forever. That's just like Diamond is a girl's best friend, right? Ferengis only like eating Ferengi bugs. That was such an unnecessary part of the episode that landed so well. It's like the details of what's going to really make this feel lived in and fully fleshed out is Ferengis like eating bugs, don't you? Yeah, but we like specific bugs, Ferengi bugs.
Which we know people that are that way. Not, I'm thinking more of like the area code kind of thing. Oh, Columbus, man, Columbus pizza is so good. Yeah, Detroit pizza's trash, that kind of thing.
I would compare it to people that are like, yeah, I love to eat pigs and cows and lamb for dinner, but horses, disgusting. Goats, gross. And it's like, no, it's just what you're used to. They're all the same kind of creature, right? Like, yeah, you're
dogs. Well,
yeah. And we know Ferengi like bugs, so it's whatever.
Yeah.
They made jambalaya for camping. Ben did. I know we haven't met Ben. I know we haven't met Ben Sisko's father yet, who is a New Orleans chef, and I am excited for you to meet him. I'm excited for you to meet him because I like that character a lot, and I love New Orleans and I love New Orleans cuisine. I make jambalaya; it's delicious. But my wife happened to be walking by, and she's like, "You can't make jambalaya for camping. It's this whole elaborate meal." And then I really thought about it because first of all, I Googled like jambalaya and camping, and there's a lot of results of here's how you make jambalaya while you're camping. And when I really thought about it, the thing about jambalaya is it's a ton of freaking prep. You are cutting up so much crap. But to cook it, you just put it in a pot and let it simmer.
Yep.
So if you prepped all your veggies and your meats ahead of time, and Sisko just replicates, he could probably get the replicator to already chopped up bell peppers and onions and whatever. But if you're just if you do your prep ahead of time, jambalaya would be pretty easy to do around a campfire. And I love jambalaya.
Yeah,
the thing is, you couldn't have the rice with it. But well.
Yeah.
I like to eat it over rice myself, but
that's the way. Yeah. R.I.P. CBC, Columbus Brewing Company, the restaurant they used to have it. I used to get it quite a bit there. It was always good. But I know there's some place around town. I just haven't got it in a while. But it also made me think of the Soup Nazi episode when Newman gets jambalaya.
Quarks claims a bias against the Federation of how they don't like Ferengi. And you used to be like us, but we never had slavery and all that crap. Man, it has merit. And by the end of that scene, I was rooting for Quark and agreeing with him.
At first I thought he was trying too hard to get that going, but I guess there is some validity there.
Anti-capitalist, but his point of you don't like us because we value profit, but look, we haven't gone so far as to do slavery. We haven't gone so far as to have like all these homeless people. We haven't gone so far as to do all these things you guys did with your greedy capitalism. That made me feel like a little bit on his side. Then we have the attack, and there's a light attack because the Vorta character, or if we don't establish she's Vorta, whatever, Eris, she sends out her light beam from her hands and all that. The actress I did read, she was hoping that would be like the Live Long and Prosper, like she was inventing a gesture for the Vorta, but they were like, she's like with the CGI and the effects that Star Trek had, it kind of got lost, and none of the other Vorta ever did that hand gesture, and sorry, but
I like the thought.
The thought was cool, but again, I was like, a light attack. Haven't we had enough freaking light attacks on Star Trek? But she was running from the Jem'Hadar, who we get to meet in this episode. What was your first impression of the Jem'Hadar as a species? I'm curious.
I thought they were just, here's this episode's bad guys.
Okay.
Initially, at this point. But then by the end, I wrote, the Jem'Hadar do not mess around.
No. They
talk the talk and walk the walk. They're bad people.
Really interesting note about the Jem'Hadar in this episode. The main Jem'Hadar, I assume he's the main Jem'Hadar because there's only one Jem'Hadar on IMDb. Talak Talan was played by Cress Williams, and this was his very first role. I don't know if you're familiar with Cress, but he has 67 credits right now. After this, he went on to do a 13-episode arc of Beverly Hills 90210. This is his only Trek credit, by the way, one thing. But I'd say most people probably know him best in the main role of Black Lightning on the CW. He was Black Lightning. Okay. He also played Bailey's husband on Grey's Anatomy early on before she divorced him and married Jason George. But according to IMDb, he's best known for Black Lightning, of course, because he was the main character. Never Been Kissed, Fallen, and In Your Eyes. He also did like some episodes of The Flash and stuff on the CW because when the DC, the Arrowverse all crossed over, of course, he got involved in that. But I love Cress Williams, and it was so cool to see that this was his very first role.
I thought it was good. I didn't realize how young he was at this time. But it makes sense, especially with all those credits, too.
I mean, he was born in 1970, so he would have been 24?
Yeah.
23, 24, probably 24. They probably filmed it after New Year's because this aired in like June 1994. But yeah, he's had so many credits since then. He did guest spots on The West Wing and Sports Night, so Sorkin liked him. Guest 14 episodes of ER, 10 episodes of Friday Night Lights, 7 episodes of Grey's Anatomy, 9 episodes of Prison Break. He starred in Heart of Dixie on the CW, 76 episodes. He was the mayor. I remember he had a pet alligator. Yeah, I love Cress. So good casting by them, finding an up-and-coming actor who would end up being somebody to play your first Jem'Hadar.
Yeah. I like the name. It doesn't sound like anything else to me. I mean, we can pronounce it, but it's still
the name Jem'Hadar.
Yeah,
it's a cool name. I like
them the Jem'Hadar, and then of course they're part of the Dominion.
Dominion, which is run by the Founders. I think they mentioned the Founders in this episode.
Yeah.
But they don't know who the Founders are yet. It's not Eris's species. It's a different species.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought, and again, this could be my bias, but while they're in the cage, the light ring cage, it really felt to me like Eris was acting strangely. And I wonder if was there anything about her behavior that set off any bells for you in the moment? Or was that purely something for the rewatchers, which in 1994, they probably didn't think they'd have a lot of rewatchers that were like, oh.
Right. Yeah, I felt like I said, I was glad Keith forgot, because my only thing was, like I said, is like, it seems like they should be able to get out of there.
Okay.
And I thought we were going to some kind of, it reminded me of Empath, but also Gamesters of Triskelion, because I guess I can only think in TOS terms, but just the way that was. But I just kept thinking, well, she's going to be a one and doneer, and so
she is
right as a character. But I thought that her whole thing was going to be that way.
If you ever get a chance to rewatch this episode, or make a point of rewatching it, I don't know. Every freaking scene she's in that cage, if you watch her face and her body language, she is screaming, I'm up to something.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I really like that it was subtle enough that you and Keith didn't get it. And for me, who knows what's going on, because that's the thing. Like, I didn't expect you to get it, but Keith has seen enough. I thought he'd get it, especially because to me, she was telegraphing it so hard.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that she telegraphed it so hard and yet subtle.
Yeah.
So the rewatch, she'd be like, well, why weren't they paying attention?
The signs are there all along. Yeah.
So, yeah, go rewatch it. Rewatch it and just watch her in those scenes. And you'll be like, that actress knew what was going on. Molly Hagan was prepping us. Molly Hagan was future-proofing this episode for sure.
So Eris is the one who says the Founders are a myth. And then Talak Talan is like, oh no, they created
it. Sure does say that.
Yeah.
I loved that she said that. It's a lie, but you'll come to find out the Vorta lie a lot. You can't trust what comes out of a Vorta's mouth. And I think even in retrospect, she perfectly played it for what the purpose that the Jem'Hadar and she had in this episode. This episode was so much about learning about them. And that's also what bothered me. Every scene where Sisko was telling about the Federation, I was like, shut up, shut up. She is taking every word in. You are feeding in her hands and giving her exactly what she wants. Again, I never tell you to do this, Stephen, but I think it's worth your time if you can carve out 40 minutes the next couple of weeks to rewatch this with your new context. It is going to scream to you, and you're going to have all new appreciation for what Molly Hagan was doing. You're going to be like, no, stop. Sisko, shut up!
I think I felt empathy because it's a simple thing. Or having that, she's like, oh, this thing, a device around my neck. Well, and they're all both trying so hard, and our new friend. So like I said, she got me too. So she got you. But again, if you know, and that's all in here, and that's what I love. Like, it's not just you're playing it blindly because you don't know what's coming, which most shows would do. And she obviously didn't know what was coming, but I guess they gave her enough clue in to play it a certain way. Right. Yeah, that's cool.
Just works. Cool. That's what elevates this episode so much for me.
Yeah.
Is I'm like, I get why it got past you guys. I don't expect you to catch it. But on the rewatch, it holds up in a way that I didn't expect it to. In a way that she wasn't pretending that well. She was just, anyway.
That's awesome.
I'm going to stop repeating. I'm just repeating myself, so I'm going to stop it. But seriously, rewatch. And any of you listeners who did not realize she was a bad guy from the beginning, take 40 minutes or 10 minutes and just rewatch her scenes. You won't regret it. You'll have all the appreciation for what Molly Hagan was doing. The Jem'Hadar knows a lot, but he says he won't be the one asking questions. But nobody ever shows up to ask the questions, which to me was like another clue. Ding, ding, ding. It's the freaking Vorta in the cell with you. Jake and Nog can't play the runabout. Chef's kiss. And even though, no, that's the thing Jake says in the beginning. He wants to learn how to fly a runabout. And Ben says no. Good callback. Good through line.
Do you need a permit to drive a runabout? Do you need a license?
Assume so. However, I also think similarly, I think if some kids got in a car today and drove it on the road to flee some people that had abducted them,
right,
and were torturing their parents and possibly killing them, I don't think those kids would be charged.
I was just thinking more in a general way, do they need to? I guess just anybody.
Because runabouts are Starfleet property.
Yeah.
So you would need to be Starfleet trained.
Yeah.
To get authorization. Starfleet's not just going to authorize a 12-year-old or whatever Jake is, 14-year-old to fly the runabout.
I really enjoyed Nog just yelling out random things. That's what I laughed the hardest. Evasive maneuver, fire phasers, launch torpedoes.
So I will spoil that Nog is my annoyance of this episode.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying I didn't find the humor in his annoyance.
Yeah.
It was amusing. I will say I just didn't find a strong argument for anybody else to be annoying. And I found them more annoying than Quark if you're judging them based on the characters. Nog, take a chill pill. And again, I'm probably judging Nog somewhat on how his character develops after this. But I was
I landed on Quark, I think, just because Nog made me laugh so much. So
that's fair, because Quark was acting annoying. They talk about the containment field will kill you. And then they talk about how the Dominion and the Jem'Hadar have already destroyed a bunch of vessels. And they give them a whole list of vessels they've destroyed. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but as they're being we've already killed all these people, I got chills. I'm like, oh God, my blood ran cold. And I'm like, they are so freaking dangerous. We murdered all these people, but now we allowed you to live because we want you to take a message back. Then we murdered all these people and you need to stay out or else.
Yeah, despite that, I thought the Odyssey was going to be fine. And obviously...
Oh, I didn't. I did not remember the episode enough to know it was going to be destroyed, but I was convinced it was going to be destroyed.
And that makes sense. And maybe that should have been another tip off too, because a lot of the dialogue they were using was we've seen it before on TNG and TOS, shields are down to this or that. But I like whether it was director's choice or whatever, the way their way of shaking the bridge was a lot different than what we're used to of people flying around. It was kind of
It was well done. Kim Friedman deserves some credit. But what I noted was we know what a Galaxy class bridge looks like. Yes. And they've done this on Next Gen before too, where we have a guest ship that's a Galaxy class and they keep it real tight.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to use the Enterprise D bridge. And at this point, they're already filming Generations. They didn't get a break to film it. But man, if you just given them a couple hours on that bridge, it would have made the difference, because to me, I was distracted by the fact that this isn't a Galaxy class bridge. This is not. We get this tiny little shot of 3 people that clearly doesn't have the architecture of the Enterprise D. And you can argue legitimately so if you're going to make up canon for Star Trek. The Enterprise D was the flagship, and so they built their bridge twice as big as any other Galaxy class bridge. And the other Galaxy classes don't have that bridge. They have a smaller version, and that does make sense to a certain extent. Here's the model ship, here's the realistic ship everybody else gets. But it still bothered me of couldn't you give them a couple hours to film on the Enterprise D bridge? It's not like the set didn't exist. It was right there across the lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I foolishly thought Keogh and the actor Alan Oppenheimer were going to be around for other episodes. I don't know why I started. Maybe it's just because I like Oppenheimer. But
it did kind of feel like it was part 1 of 2. It did kind of feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, we opened season 2 with a 2-parter called The Search Part 1 and 2.
Okay.
Or sorry, we opened season 3 with a 2-parter called The Search Part 1 and 2. That does involve the Dominion, and so does kind of play into this, but it's not. I guess you could almost say that this episode and the 2-part opener is similar to the 3-part opener in this season, where they all connect, but they are kind of separate story. I'd say The Search, the other 2 parts are much more a cohesive story separate from this than a 3-part, the way the Circle and the Siege and whatever were.
Okay.
But yeah, the Galaxy class ship, I could see the writing on the wall that it wasn't going to survive. And my thinking was, how the heck do you justify these runabouts surviving? And that answer is easy. They let them go.
Oh, right.
Right? Like they wanted the message sent home. I mean, my alternate episode is the Dominion. We don't see it on screen. And again, the Game of Thrones is still in my head from last week's episode. But like, we don't see what happens to Sisko and Quark. But then they deliver 2 ops. They beam in a box, and it's Sisko's head in it, or Quark's head in it, or both. Right? Like, stay out. It's very much The Walking Dead, where the Whisperers, like you had a few little encounters that didn't amount to anything. And then the way the Whisperers stake their territory is they kill like 16 characters and put their heads on stakes. And quite honestly, if you're doing Walking Dead, Jake and Nog's heads come back too, because there are children in that lineup of bikes. I feel like it's tamer because it's the 90s, but it had the same effect to me of don't mess with us. We're dangerous. We can kill you. These people only return because we let them return to tell you, don't mess with us.
And I love the O'Brien's playing me there. It's like, wait a minute, why did this happen? And Sisko's on. It's like, no, they're showing us. They're sending a message. And yeah, my reaction when it did the suicide run, I'm like, whoa, what? But yeah, it makes sense.
A suicide run during the retreat.
Yeah.
That was a message.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could have let them go, and you chose not to.
Yeah.
They did unload non-essential personnel on DS9. Thank goodness, because that would be 1,000 people, families, children, everybody.
Right. Well, and it gets back to the thing we've discussed many times. These guys, this is very dangerous stuff these guys do. So it makes sense that some people are going to die.
Well, the Jem'Hadar, will find out a lot more about them, but they are bred to be soldiers and they have no problem sacrificing themselves. Okay. The kamikaze thing we saw will not be out of character with other things we see from them. Yeah. And I'm not going to give all the stuff away about the Jem'Hadar, but like, man, they're so scary. They are scarier to me than the Borg because they're just more ruthless in terms of sending that message home. Whereas I don't think the Borg would kill just to kill. They're trying to get you, right? They want you to be part of them. Yeah. They're the cult that wants you to join them. The Jem'Hadar, I mean, we've got a war coming up with these people. It's not going to be bloodless. It's not going to be low body count.
They're more like the Dark Knight Chaos Joker kind of thing. Like some people just want to.
It's so freaking scary. Again, I'm biting my tongue so much because I don't want to. Don't want to, but what I want to say about that is this was a very good introduction. And I will say, I think the Jem'Hadar, especially to a lesser extent the Vorta, but the Jem'Hadar especially came out fully formed here. And this is the version of them you will see for the next 5 seasons.
Okay. Yeah. My naivete, my Pollyanna-ish is in my alternate episode. And that mine was, I'd like to see more Adventures of the Odyssey that I'm not going to see.
I mean, my other alternate episode besides Hen in the Box was what if, and this wouldn't work for the message they were trying to do with this episode, but what if we just got a whole Jake and Nog perspective episode where they're rescuing the adults?
Yeah. And
it was played for fun.
And that's where I thought we were going to go. And I'm totally happy.
A season 1 DS9 episode.
Yeah.
Or a next gen episode. It would have fit in perfectly well with what's come before. The fact that we didn't get it, I think, tells you something about where DS9's heading.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of the Wesley and not Winona, not Naomi, Ashley Judd episode where they kind of saved the day.
Yeah.
In a similar way, the younger folks saved the day. I only have 2 other notes. One is Star Trek imitating Star Wars, and actually just in a general statement, I was also very happy to have all that action at the end. I was like, I'm really enjoying this. And it was very dogfighty. And so there is a line, Kira says, a line that Princess Leia says in the not the dogfight scene, but the Millennium Falcon is leaving Star Wars, the motion picture. And as they're getting away from the Death Star, and she says, "Here they come," and it's classic, dun, dun, classic music and all that, which also makes me think, and I didn't think this until you said it, where you're like, well, they let them get away, which is also a line at the end of that, right after that scene in Star Wars. That's a line in that, but the same thinking was like, oh, they wanted us to get away so they could find our base. In this instance, it's a different message being sent. And Leia's the only one smart enough to have it figured out. My only other note is a fashion note. I enjoyed Sisko's traveling leisure outfit. Not as much as Picard would show, or Riker, but
DS9 does much better with the off hours uniforms than the next gen did.
Yeah. But
I mean, next gen basically has the jumpsuit that Jake wears for the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And Picard with chest hair showing. Those are their 2 leisure looks. Or Riker with chest hair showing. Those are 2 leisure looks. I think DS9 does a little better with the leisure looks, in my opinion. I think the original series movies did a good job with the leisure looks. I mean, McCoy in that 70s disco suit was beautiful. But I've got a few other notes. They mentioned they wipe out the Bajoran colony. I sure hope it's not the one Kayapaka's at with the where they keep dying and coming back to life. I don't think so. I think it's a different one, but like an actual Bajoran colony they were trying to establish. Life, They're gone. They're gone. It's done. There's no Bajoran colony in the Gamma Quadrant anymore. We hope Kayapaka's still there. I don't think we ever hear about that again. Odo talks to Kira about going to rescue Quark, and he says you'd miss him too. I think it was Kira he was talking to.
Yeah.
Loved that so much. Frenemies. Oh, so good. It did bump on me that once we sent the 2 runabouts into the Gamma Quadrant, all the leads were involved in the story. You're either prisoners or you're either on the runabout that left or these other 2 runabouts. And I'm like, that's dumb. The original series taught us you don't put all your leads in the away team.
Yep.
Next gen always kept Picard back. Not DS9. They're just going to send everybody.
Yep.
The Sisko tosses Quark a phaser rifle during their escape. I really liked that because I do think Quark's bias comments early in the episode were true. And I think that was Sisko's way of saying, I've acknowledged the bias and I'm getting past it. I want you to help me. I respect you in this moment. I respect you as an individual and a human being. I think at the beginning of the episode, Sisko wouldn't have tossed Quark a phaser rifle. I liked that in terms of growth.
I like anything that looks like the rifle from Where No Man Has Gone Before. So
I like that Quark was the one that figured out that Eris was a traitor.
Yeah.
And it was done so well where it wasn't overplayed and it was subtle and it came in late and they don't explain it.
Yep.
But it sure is a good thing he stole that necklace as they were escaping, because had he not picked it up as they were fleeing, so Quark's Ferengi foibles came in handy here. They wouldn't have known, and she would have been free to spy on the Federation as she had planned on.
Don't BS a BSer, as they say.
But then my last note is you noticed she beamed away. They don't know how she beamed away through their shields, and there was no visible ship there to pick her up.
Yeah.
I don't have like, oh, this is how it done whatever to tell you. I just have to say that to me raises the threat level of the Dominion up several more notches. If I can escape from the station through your shields without a vessel to come rescue me. The Dominion's dangerous. Dangerous. I know you watched Star Trek Discovery. I watched the 3rd episode of the final season this week, and they mention this treasure hunt. They're like, why didn't you talk to the Federation then? They're like, we were in the middle of the Dominion War. And I was like, you haven't seen what the Dominion War is. Once you see what it is, you'll be like, I don't know if you bumped on that when watching Discovery, but there's no point of Star Trek history that prepares you for, you're just going to ignore this huge thing because you're in a war. Once you see the Dominion War, you're going to be like, oh, yeah, no, I understand why you're just going to put that off and deal with it another day. Like it's all encompassing. It's huge. All I will say is billions will die. Billions. It's big. It's bad. It's awful. And it starts soon. Now that we've been introduced to not too soon.
Yeah.
DS9 is still going to take its time going to all-out war. But it's now that you've met the Dominion, it's definitely on the horizon. It's coming. And this is where I kept saying, like, the first 2 seasons are good. and we're ramping up to something. And here comes the something. But I will say season 3 is still relatively tame of like, we're going to talk about it, but let's take our time getting there. We're still not a serialized show yet. Wink, wink.
Yeah, and it just makes you think, that, we talked about Roddenberry not wanting conflict. And,
conflict between Starfleet officers.
That's it. That's true.
If you read the legitimacy of his rule, by adding Odo and Quark and Kira, you've got a loophole built in.
That's true. That's a good point. And, TOS was such a Cold War kind of show that you didn't have a lot of hot war.
The movies specifically, they were in a Cold War with the Klingons.
Yeah. And then, so this is, and we had a little taste of it in TNG with a couple of those battles. And then here we've got, obviously, it's coming.
Well, we got a taste of the Cardassian War because that was happening mostly behind the scenes, but we just got glimpses of it. And that's over now. But I will say, I think season 3 is a step in that direction. But the season 4 opener is still one of my favorite things of DS9. And that is where, like, that show tells you, we are here for war. This show is about war. This isn't your mama's Trek. This isn't your daddy's Trek.
Yeah.
We'll get to the season 4 opener. Big 2-hour season premiere. It's called The Way of the Warrior. It's amazing. We're only a season away. So let's get to the rankings. And there's still a lot of good stuff in season 3 before we get that far. So I don't want to rush us.
Yeah.
We're doing 8 episodes of DS9 season 3 before we get to Star Trek Generations. And then doing 4 more before Voyager premieres. So we essentially have like 12 episodes of DS9 before Voyager hits the scene.
We got a while.
It's nice to have like 3 months, maybe 4 for us, where we just focused on DS9 without those other distractions. I mean, we have that next gen film in there, but
I was so used to, our usual routine. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. No, these 2 weeks are all DS9.
Yeah. Well, we'll only get a few months of that, and then we're going to be back to the back and forth.
Which is fun, too.
For the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Because DS9 and Voyager overlapped for 5 years.
Wow.
But then Voyager did its final 2 seasons on its own, and Enterprise premiered after the end of Voyager and only ran by itself. So we get through the 5 years, then we get back to what we're used to of 1 Trek in a row. And then when we do new Trek, we're going to be bouncing around so much. 10 episodes, 10 episodes, 10 episodes. We're going to do 5 shows, and then we go back to the 5th show ago.
Wow, yeah.
That'll
be fun.
Anyway, ranking. Who is your shady character in the Jem'Hadar?
Aris or whatever. Aris.
Absolutely. That's unanimous across the board. Keith and I agree with you. I thought they said Eris, but it is spelled Eris. So I don't know.
Maybe it is Eris. Yeah, I mean that might be the way they were saying.
I thought that's what they said. I wrote it down as ARAS, but IMDb has as ERIS. So whatever. We know who we're talking about. The Vorta.
Yeah.
Or the prisoner, because I don't think they said Vorta. But yeah. Who is your annoying character?
Quark. Yeah, I end up staying with
You did Quark. I did Nog. Keith actually did the Jem'Hadar Talon, Cress Williams character.
Yeah.
So I disagree with him on that he's annoying, but I could kind of see what he means.
Yeah.
Who are you having a drink with?
Morn, so you can tell me what he couldn't tell Quark.
Going Quark because he's both way in over his head, and also he's the one that figured it out. Yeah. So he deserves a drink.
Yeah.
After that, Keith's having a drink with Ares, despite his finding him shady.
Yeah. I guess I can see that.
You go ahead and start at the top. I don't think this is going to be episode number 1 for us. It's not for me, but I think we need to start at the top because it's going to be relatively near the top.
Sure.
So right now, our number 1 for the season is Blood Oath.
Definitely go below that.
Yep. So the original series Klingons maintain number 1 spot for season 2, deservedly so. Below that is The Wire.
Greatest show of all time.
I watched 2 seasons, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
Solid episode.
Yeah. I think I'd go below that.
I would too. Garrick beats Quark for me.
Yeah.
Below that is Crossover, Mirror Universe.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely going below that.
Oh really?
I'm very partial to mirror universes.
I think I would have gone above crossover.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Keith thought this belonged at the top. We did not get into
Very
the
top.
rankings.
Okay.
Well, we didn't
Or
get
near the top.
into that far.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna guess I'm probably gonna put it in the third place spot because to me what Keith was saying was he wanted it I think he would have agreed
Yeah.
we're gonna rank it down a couple, but I think I might put it there. We'll see. We'll see how far down you want to go, but I think I might put it there as a consensus spot. Below the crossover is the collaborator.
Also a good one.
I know.
That's close. I might go below that, but I'm not sure.
Below that is the Maquis part 1 and 2, with 2 being the higher ranked.
Those were good. With
yeah.
With Ben Casey. I think you know what? I'm gonna go above the collaborator. I'll change.
So you would go just below the crossover. So you know what we're gonna do? So instead of just guessing where Keith would place it, we're gonna make him rank whether it's above or below the crossover.
Nope.
Or crossover, not the crossover.
Right.
Because I think that's absolutely fair. I will say, apart from Tribunal last week, which we ranked number 11, which will now be number 12, no matter how this shakes out, of 26, which is still a pretty good ranking. Apart from that, the last 7 episodes are our top 7 episodes. The top 7 episodes are 7 of the 8 last episodes.
Yeah.
This season, but right below that's the Homecoming, which was part of the 3-part opener.
Yeah.
This was such a strong season, and I would argue, well, I don't think we have to argue, but it ended so strong with so many great episodes at the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say in the teens, 17, 13, 11, 15, 14 were near the bottom of the season rankings. Okay. But these 19 through the end, we're at the top of the rankings. Even 18, Profit and Loss isn't very far down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's right above the Tribunal last week's. So yeah, really promising end to season 2, which only makes me more excited for getting into the next 5 seasons, knowing that it hasn't peaked yet. And similar when Next Gen started to do a good run at the end of season 2.
Yeah.
Shades of Grey aside. When it started to find its stride in seasons 2 and 3, I'm here's DS9 starting to hit its stride.
I think the not being tied to a starship makes me more excited every week about it, even though I know we, in a way, we still got a space station, there's a captain and there's a crew and all that, but
we got the runabouts.
And me knowing, I did see enough of TNG that I had a better feel for that than I did for this coming in. And so now, I'm going to be very disappointed when there are episodes that aren't that good.
I will say, I agree with that. I don't think there's anything that hits the lows we've already hit. I think we've already hit the lowest episodes of the series. But they will eventually get a starship. But they'll still be based on the station, and they'll just take the starship out as needed. Which I think is really good because the runabouts just seem too weak to take out as needed.
Yeah.
In the middle of a war, you don't want to take a runabout out, right?
Yeah.
So keeping it station based, but giving them a starship they can use from the station, I think works really well. And I'm sorry if that was a spoiler, but you mentioned you like that they don't have a starship, and I'm well, eventually you got to give them a starship because they're in a war. You got to have some mobility at times to get through that wormhole and deal with something. Well, and also if we're going to be in a war, as much as I like the perspective of the station, you don't want to spend the next 5 seasons trapped on the perspective of the station during the war. You want to be able to get out to the front lines and get into the battles. And they're not, sometimes they'll be at the station, but they're not always going to be at the station. So, anyway, next week, we're going to wrap up DS9 Season 2, break it down, rank our best, rank our worst, and then we go on our normal hiatus. We're going to have some bonus episodes, at least one free to podcast listeners, at least one hidden behind the paywall for Patreon donors. Patreon.com/IBD if you want to hear about Saturday Night Live and Living Color Carol Burnett sketches about Star Trek, or you want to hear our thoughts on Cop Rock, which we've talked about forever.
Yes.
I think you want the audio, $2 a month. All you need, you're going to get those bonus episodes. We'd appreciate the support. But again, season recap will be released to everybody for free, as it always is. Until then, live long.
R.I.P. Odyssey and prosper.
And Captain Keel.
Keel.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's got the time?